rising above the Atlantic fury, breaking on the shores of County Clare, the uniquely Irish wail of the Uilleann pipes. Here on Ireland's most western shores in the Burren in Clare, an area of unique Arctic and alpine flora, Eugene Lambe, ex-civil servant and ex-scientist, retreats from his native Dublin to this wild and beautiful place to devote his life to the making of Uilleann pipes. But in many ways, it must also be a coming home, for this is an area rich in traditional music and still immersed in an unchanging lifestyle.
Out to holiday. I wanted to try an experiment to see whether I could survive working at a craft which was the complete antithesis of what modern society is attempting to do.
Jodie Morgan, Eugene's American companion. She too has come to settle in Clare, retreating into a lifestyle unique perhaps in Western Europe. For Lisa and Ian, Eugene's children, the ritual saving of the turf is a sharing in their father's new lifestyle. Dan O'Dowd, piper and pipe maker, and longtime friend of Eugene's. With local men, Tom Driscoll and Johnny O'Toole, cutting the coming winter's fuel.
Pick the right turf, Richie. The wet turf on button. That's it.
Acceptance in a community like this comes with involvement and sharing.
You're putting too much in that basket all the time. You see you're weighing the other one. Take it dry, Richie. We won't have it out today. We'll have to have another day out of it. Come on.
Johnny O'Toole is one of the neighbours I struck up an acquaintance with early on. Every time I see Johnny, he's got a new accomplishment. The last thing I heard was he's the local barber. He also plays mouth organ, saves turf, makes baskets. I've yet to discover the depths of his ingenuity. The two main reasons I came to live in Clare were its musical associations and also its unique environment. Clare has never had a gap in its musical traditions.
Empty schoolhouses like Fenor's remain as mute monuments to the depopulation of this part of Ireland. But now, where the scholars once learned to read the day's disasters in the master's morning face, a new process of learning and self-discovery is underway. Workbench, lathes and tools have replaced blackboard, desk and chalk. For here now, Eugene Lambe marries the skills of woodworker and metalworker with craftsman and artist to produce his pipes.
My earliest recollections of traditional music were from hearing my uncle John playing a fiddle. My mother told me she played fiddle. I didn't hear her playing very much. They also told me that John's father played concertina and he was lost in the Bay of Biscay in a shipping disaster.
Beginning with a carefully selected piece of African blackwood, Eugene begins on the chanter, the melodic part of the instrument. Mounted on the lathe, it is centered and rough-turned. This drilling process is critical because it must result in a tapered bore. The reamer makes the critical conical type shape to produce the correct sound. Tradition has it that towards the end of the 18th century, this was first achieved by using a French musket bayonet. However it was first achieved, it is unique among pipes in that this process enables the chanter to encompass 2 octaves of sound. Next comes the boring of the tone holes on the drilling jig, which will give exact distances to produce correct notes. For the pipe maker, the overall length and bore dimensions of each chanter will dictate the pitch of the finished instrument. For Eugene Lambe, the love affair with pipes began in his childhood.
My earliest associations with pipes was with war pipes. I remember as a young lad hearing the strains of the war pipes in Malahide from outside my own door, and I followed the music, came to a place called the Bawn in which Dotes Markey was practicing the war pipes, and when he'd stopped for a rest, I asked him where he got them and what they were. And he explained to me there was a band in Malahide, and next Sunday I went to the band. on my push bike and met P.T. Dignam. I asked him could I join. He said it was a shilling to join. So I couldn't wait till the next week. I had to go home and get the shilling and cycle back 3 miles to the band hall and join that morning.
The key blocks, which are placed on selected tone holes, are now paired flat. The chanter will provide the basic melody, and the precision in its construction will ultimately decide the success of the entire instrument.
Being from the northwest coast of the States, I sometimes miss the forests and the mountains. But I know if I went home, I'd miss the burn just as much. The colors of the hills here are so fantastic. The purples and the grays of the limestone with the greens of the sea. They really influence my weaving.
One of the most beautiful materials used in pipe construction is ivory. Sawn and turned down, it will provide protective and ornamental fittings for the chanter.
I spent some years in St. Sylvester's Pipe Band, and then I went from there to St. Lawrence O'Toole's band, who were at that time in Savile Place, near the Five Lamps in Dublin. It was there that I first became interested in uilleann pipes, and I was always fascinated by the sound. They reminded me of a fiddle, but there was some different quality in the music, which I could identify as being reed-like. On inquiry, I was directed to Matt Kiernan, who was living then and is still living in Cabra. And Matt said he'd make a practice set of pipes for me. About that time, I had access to a small metalworking lathe, and from an old piece of teak, I sawed up some blocks and made a set of drones to go with the practice chanter. Looking back now, they were made very crudely, but they worked, and I played them for a number of years.
When the chanter is finished, almost as much time again is spent on its decoration and final polish. After African blackwood and ivory comes brass, as the skills of the metalworker are added to the skills of the woodworker. The brass head of the chanter is silver soldered, and it connects bag with chanter. In all of this skilled work, like for example finishing the brass fittings to jewellery standards, enormous care must be taken to ensure that the entire instrument is airtight. A veritable diver's bell of music.
I remember being interested in textiles when I was very young. I remember falling madly in love with a pair of number 7 ice blue knitting needles. My mother promised to buy them for me if I would promise to learn how to use them, and I did.
My philosophy in life varies from day to day. I swing between despair and hope for mankind. I think one of mankind's basic problems is his belief in his rationality. Man would have a better chance of survival if he could consider himself rather an irrational animal. On the other hand, on the local level, my philosophy is fairly simple, that any changes I need to make must first of all come within myself. And my only way of making the society good for me to live in is to first of all create a mini society around myself by being fairly honest in what motivates me and doing that. For me, it's pipe making, making music, growing as much as I can of the things which I consume, keeping happy relations with as many people as I can, and try not to let my enemies upset me too much.
So, for Eugene Lambe, the making of pipes has become a voyage of self-discovery. The realization that while fulfilling his manual and creative instincts, it has also provided him with the opportunity to immerse himself in a lifestyle and a location that go with the imaginative hinterland of a living musical tradition. He has become a craftsman at one with his skills.